During a recent video interview we did with Corrine Sullivan, we talked about staff wanting to leave Scientology, the C organization, and also about the subject got into what happens to Scientology staff members when they pass away in the C organization, and how are they treated by the organization? Is there a service? Is there any announcement or anything like that? We thought this would be an important subject to take that section of the video and put it out separately as its own standalone video. Janice and I talked to Corinne about this, but then also we go into the information about recent long-term Sea Org members who have passed away and how they were treated and how their families were treated. We hope you find this video informative.
Because I had this ongoing problem that I wanted to go home. So I just went along with it. And, but there was something that had happened. I don't know exactly what happened, but there was a woman who died, Stacy Moxon. Stacy,
Yep.
Stacy Moxon. She was married to a Delphi alumni named Jesse Meyer. So Stacy Moxon Meyer went to international management and she passed away. And I was told that she had, it was an accident, basically. I was told what the accident was. And I just knew her very briefly, but everything really changed at the base at PAC when that happened. And then I got transferred over to Celebrity Center. And when I arrived there, I was sort of like in trouble with everybody, but my statistics weren't bad at Bridge Publications, so I didn't know why I was in trouble. So I started writing letters to the ethics department at Bridge Publications asking why this was happening. And in truth, I wasn't really very concerned with it because it was so overblown, like the emotion connected to it, that I just couldn't really see myself getting really involved in figuring out the problem. There was such a big problem in my head with being there to begin with, that all the other things just sort of are bizarre and strange, if they are off policy. But the biggest problem was that I wanted to go home, and I had this huge attention on my family the entire time I was on staff. And I was constantly getting prodded about their opinions, and the people from Delphi were brought to Celebrity Center. There was always this constant presence of these people from Delphi involved with my executive leadership, and this fact that I couldn't even be heard when I wanted to go home. And I tried to route out a number of times, and Dave Pettit, the commanding officer, would come and sit with me and basically force me to go back on post. And when I was off, I would be doing scullery work and doing mess work and sleeping in a strange location and trying to, it meant a lot to me to not leave in disgrace, because my understanding was that if you left in disgrace, that was it. You never get to fix the problem ever, really, because of these very strange hatreds and things that Stacy's death that really were very not well handled from a public relations standpoint with the staff. So you would have various things like someone dying unexpectedly and they weren't investigated and talked about, and instead you would have this hush thing where you couldn't say certain things. And not being able to talk about an actual real life occurrence in detail so that everybody understands what happened violates Scientology itself. So it was a very crazy thing to be trying to address.
In regards to Stacey Moxon, my understanding is there was a situation because her father was the church attorney, Rick Moxon, and he handles all the legal for Scientology in the U.S. or the big cases, and he's watching over things. I mean, he was the man. When we had to deal with him when my father was being sued or he was suing other Scientologists. Rick Moxon was involved checking on the case and what was happening on it. Anyway, Stacey is his daughter, and she was up at INT, and she left a note behind, and that note Marion Dendu withheld apparently from the legal authorities. And who knows if it was withheld from Rick and if Rick got the real truth or not. But she ended up frying on the whole electrical panel at the base. Now, I was not there. This is years after we had left. And so with that having happened, I'm sure everyone was on high alert for somebody wanting to leave. And I figured that's why you're bringing this up, because there you were wanting to leave. So people were probably didn't want another Stacey Moxon situation.
Possibly. And I did not put all of that together until later that, Stacey was at the base, at the L. Ron Hubbard Way base in, the large blue buildings on Sunset. And she was married to Jesse Meyer, who I went to school with. And she was in the Commodore's Messenger organization, and I was at Bridge. So we didn't necessarily interact at all, but at one point, Jesse introduced me to Stacey, and I actually wasn't aware of her background with her father's achievements. But Jesse introduced me, and she seemed like a really nice person. So whenever we walked past each other, I always said hi. And yeah, it was quite a shock. And there was another person that really sticks in my mind, actually a married couple, which was Jeremiah Deering and Lisa Deering. Jeremiah Deering was a staff member at Bridge Publications. And I met him because he worked in, what was he doing? Actually, can't remember what Jeremiah's post was, but I remember his wife, Lisa, because she would come and see me regularly, routinely for marketing strategies with the missions. And she was like a marketing specialist, so she would come and see me. And then Jeremiah would sometimes come when I was working late, and he wanted Lisa to come home, so he would come up and help her with her work with me because she was working late too. So they were a very nice couple. And they got promoted to INT, and I thought that was really great. That was probably within the first year of me being there. And then I asked an executive at Bridge how they were doing, and he was really terse and said, very straight-faced, they are gone. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, I don't know. So then I went and saw another person. It might have been Brandon Faust. It might have been Nicole, someone in HCO, which handles personnel. Hubbard Communications Office, Division 1, handles personnel. And they said that they had gotten declared. Basically, they had blown and gotten declared. So later, when I was made, so that was kind of this problem. I talked to a few people about the Deerings, wondering where they had gone to. And so then later, I was the president of the Nashville Church of Scientology, which is obviously country music, and the instrument of a banjo is like integral, I feel, to country music. And I was never informed as the president of the church there that the Deering Banjo Company is like the leading banjo company, one of the country's leading banjo companies, kind of like Taylor Guitars. And so Jeremiah's mom and dad are the owners of the Deering Banjo Company. Wow. So, yeah. So I reached out to her as soon as I learned, which was actually when I was back in LA in 2016, I believe it was. And I just put in a phone call to her and I said, I used to work with your son and at Bridge. And she was fairly judgmental about him, and she hadn't seen him she said she was basically, I asked her why she was so angry, because I felt like Jeremiah was a really nice person. And she said that her upset basically stemmed from the fact that he walked away from their family without even ever caring, in the 90s, back in 97 or something. So then I tried to find Jeremiah and Lisa Deering, and there is a Jeremiah and Lisa Deering online, but they are not Jeremiah and Lisa Deering from Scientology. So I can't really reach out to the Deering family, and it's actually my compassion for their terrible circumstance which brings me to talk about it, because I realize I can look very insensitive by talking about their business publicly. But both Deering and Moxon, those people were so nice. They were just nice individuals, and they were obviously really passionate about Scientology, and they obviously really wanted their parents' approval. They were both in prestigious executive roles, and that type of mistake that occurred around them being on staff where they were then just gone, is so severe in nature that it's a real public relations mishap that all the details aren't exposed and talked about. So again, that's part of the reason I wanted to be on this show, is these people are forgotten for the most part, and they were really great people, and they should be talked about a lot.
Right.
When did you find out about Stacy Moxon, though? Was that common knowledge in 1996 or whatever that was, or was this something you found out about after you left the Sea Organization?
No, I went to her memorial service. I was notified that there was a memorial service in the pavilion, and there were buses that were taking people there. The pavilion at Celebrity Center, which can get up to it can get several hundreds of people in there. It must have had about 400 people inside of it. So
wow. I think it depends whether one gets a service or not, depends on who is the chaplain, what organization you're with, and also how acceptable you were with the other people you worked with. And like my mother, I went to Clearwater for her service, but Heber had wanted to keep it to family only. And at that time, it was confidential to anyone else that she'd even passed away, until a mission was fired. And that mission went and talked to all the celebrities individually and told them of her death, at which point they all went to the celebration of life, but no one remembered to invite the kids. So us kids did not get invited to her funeral.
Wow.
And so to me, it's like it really depends on who has that job of putting it together. And like when Phoebe Maurer passed away, I went down to the manor where we did the service, and her son, who had left the Sea Org, he had been invited and he showed up, Mike Maurer. So though he was no longer Sea Org and considered, a bad hat, he was still invited. So it's different circumstances, and it depends who all is involved, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Yeah, it's really upsetting. It's very upsetting. There should just be a protocol that's followed for everybody equally, because anybody who's on staff, they have to get rid of all of their personal possessions. They are subject to having security come through and just throw their stuff away. It's pretty bad. So, there should just be a uniform way that the death of a Scientologist who's on staff is addressed.
You're totally correct, because even Annie Broker, when she passed away, the family was not told. The sisters never got any of her belongings, so they don't know what happened to it.
Yeah, and my sister, who was a public Scientologist, she died in 2012, and I found out. They didn't inform our family. I found out on Facebook 6 months later that she was dead by going to her Facebook page. Do you know what I mean? And it's a heartless thing. Now, I'm an SP and I've been declared, and so we're not going to let anybody know. And they didn't even let my mother know. They did not even let my mother know, who was not a Scientologist. So it's very heartless.
Yeah, it really is, and it really impacts, I think, the living's survival, because it's so low. It just makes everything kind of hard to deal with for me personally.
I agree.
Like, I'll never
and
forget these people. I mean, I remember their stories. I like carry it with me.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
and
the attitude of a staff member is, oh, it's just a body. They'll go get a new one, and then we'll meet up again.
it doesn't
Heartless.
do anything for their public relations image either to do this. I mean, to at least have the compassion to let the family know that somebody
Right.
passed away and why. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just all the whole disconnection and all that jazz. You know, it's just ridiculous. You know, Scientology is doing themselves no favors in this regard.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.